Hi everybody, so I'm going to talk to you how you can make a slab mug using a form. So you can either find a cup in your home, like that was my kiddo's Batman cup, or some kind of cylinder that you can use for the piece. The cap fell off when I was putting it under there. So some kind of a smaller cylinder. It can be any size. You don't want a gigantic cup or a teeny tiny cup. You want a regular sized cup because you're going to be adding some of your symbols for your social commentary and possibly a handle. And then you need to wrap that in paper towel. If you don't wrap the piece in paper towel, the clay will stick to it. So it will stick to glass, plastic, anything. So you want to wrap it in paper towel. And then you want to tape it so that it is taped and that the paper towel is going to stay on the form when you guys use it. So you would just take your paper towel and wrap it around your form. And I use blue masking tape because that's what I had available. Masking tape definitely works better, but if you have, it doesn't have to be blue tape, but if you just have Scotch tape, that's fine too. But you have to wrap it if you're going to do it in this method. The other method is like the paper cup one that you will see in class in the little video that we did in Ceramics 1, or you did with Miss Martin in Ceramics 1. So it's a really good idea to go get a rolling pin from the dollar store if you don't have one, a wood one. Plastic rolling pins, the clay will stick to it. If you do, all you have is a plastic rolling pin, or you don't have any rolling pin at home, then like a can of Pam or something that you wrap in paper towel. Okay, so what I'm doing here that you can't see anything in this picture is I am cutting my clay, and you want to cut that clay 2 fingers down. And the reason you can't see it here is because I couldn't put the clay under my phone. I had my phone propped up. So I'm cutting 2 fingers down on my fresh clay, and then I'm going to take that clay and I'm going to need to either roll it or toss it. And I recommend that you toss that clay a few times on the table so that you stretch out that clay and get it soft and ready to make it big enough to fit on your cup form. So after you've done that and you've gotten your clay, here it is, your block, you're going to need to try to roll it, or I would say toss it. And if you try to toss it on the slab mat, it will slide all over the place. So it's a better idea to put it on something else and toss it a few times to stretch it out. If you don't have a rolling pin, you can usually toss it pretty evenly. And then you guys got 2 paint sticks that work pretty well, and they're a little thin, but they're a pretty good thickness for rolling out your clay so it's even. So what I'm doing is I'm going to take and make sure that my slab is big enough to fit around the form. So that's why I said measure 2 fingers down and toss it a couple times so that you can get that clay so it is soft enough to roll out and wide enough that you can actually use it for your piece. So what I'm doing now with the cup under the screen here is I'm on the other table and I am tossing that slab a few times. Okay, and then I'm going to put my slab mat down in my clay, and now I am ready to roll it out a little bit more so it's a bit thinner and ready for me to cut it and use it. So then after you do it one way, it's good to roll it and do it the other way. It's also good sometimes to flip it and do both sides when you guys are rolling out the clay, so you guys have both sides rolled out of that. And then my stick breaks, watch this. Ah! So that probably happens to your stick too. So a pencil will work too. Don't have it super sharp, a little bit dull. And don't worry if you get pencil on the clay. You guys know it just burns out in the kiln. So I'm going to cut off that excess clay, and then always put your clay in a clay bag so that it will not dry out and you can always wedge it and reuse it again. So after you've done that a few times to kind of even it out, I'm going to roll it a little thinner because I realized that it was not quite wide enough for my cup form. So I roll it out here a little bit thinner. And then after I roll it out that way, I like to do it the other way too, so it's wide enough for my cup form to fit on there. And then these really help to make it even. So if you don't have your sticks with you or something to use for that, then just check your slab and make sure it's nice and even, because if you have thin spots and thick spots, it can crack. So I would say not thicker than your pinky and not really, really thin, like paper thin. So again, I like to flip it and roll both sides so it's nice and evenly rolled out and it's wide enough to put my form on. And then after I've rolled it out a few more times to make it nice and even, then I like to take and just double check that it's a nice even thinness. Now you can see my rolling pin won't quite reach because it's not one of our giant ones like we have in class, so I rolled it on both sides of the form. And I'm just freehanding it when I cut it, but you could use the sticks that you got, the paint sticks, as rulers. I like to do that first because it's a lot easier to trim when I actually make the form. So I'm also cutting the bottom here. You can't see that in my video recording because I literally put my phone up on top of a vase and then put a jar of glaze on it to make my own little document camera. It's my make-do one. So now I'm rolling it a little more to make sure that my cup will fit on the form. And after I check that, then I'm going to wrap that around my cylinder that has the paper towel on it, or it could be the tumbler. So I'm using the tumbler, which is just narrower at the base. And again, I like to trim off the top so it's even. It's just a lot easier to do, and I switched to my needle tool. You guys can purchase a needle tool either online, or you can get them in kits, pottery kits at Hobby Lobby for under $10, and there are coupons online, so you'd probably pay like $6 for it. All right, so here's the important part. After I overlap this onto the piece, before I even slip and score it, then once it's overlapped, you can take your pencil or your stick or your needle tool. A knife doesn't work. Don't try to use a knife. And just cut where it's overlapped. This is so helpful. I don't know if you saw this in Ceramics 1, but this is so helpful to be able to do this. So what you would do then is you would cut it, and then I like to trim the top again before I slip and score it. So just making sure that it will meet. And it's nice to keep it on the form because it stays round. Remember when you were doing it in Ceramics 1 when you had the flat form and then you had to try to make it round? This just helps to keep it that way. So then I'm going to slip and score the form. So I use my scoring tool and I put slip with the scoring tool there and on the other side. If you don't slip and score, it will come apart at the seam. So you must slip and score, and you can build it right on your form. So after I slip and score it together, see, I realized I needed more score marks and slip there so it would really attach. You don't have the little roller like we have in class or like you saw her use in the video. So you could try using a rolling pin, but it's hard to do because it's awkward. So what I like to do is use my scoring tool, and with the scoring tool, I will scrape it together, and then I make sure it's really attached well. And then after I score it together, I take the flat end of the scraper tool and I use that to smooth it. So that will do the outside of the form, but you'll have to go in later to the inside of the form to make that. So if you have it wrapped around an actual cup, it's a lot easier to do this than trying to do it with your hand inside of it. All right, and now is when I'm going to trim that rim so it's a little more even, because that rim is really off. So I tap the bottom of it to make it a little easier, a place where I can put the foot. And then I'm going to use my needle tool, or you can use your stick or a pencil that's slightly dull. And when I do this, I just drag my needle tool sideways. I'm not using the point of it because I want to just draw or score where I want to cut it first. It's always good to score, which just basically means to scratch, right? To score or draw in where I'm going to cut it, and then use more of the point of your tool to cut it. So that I really have a nice even rim. After I cut that rim off, I want to put that extra clay in my clay bag, because remember, we can wedge it and reuse it. Don't throw it away. You need to save all the clay that you guys can. And then it's really, I'm tapping the base again, it's really important that you are smoothing out that rim. So you can take the cup out of the form to do that, so that you get a rim. You can always put it back in to use it again, because it is kind of floppy right now. So after you take that cup out, you really have to work on smoothing the inside and then on your rim. I will not fire it if you bring in a cup with a really sharp edges on your rim, because they will become very sharp in the firing of the kiln, and you want to actually be able to drink out of this, okay? You could do a cup that is non-functional, but we still want it so that it would look like you could drink out of it. And then you would need to roll a slab and slip and score it on for the base as well, so that you're adding a base to your form. Now you want that piece to get leather hard after you have made the form, so you can either just leave it in a Ziploc bag with it open a teeny bit, or you can let it sit out for a few hours and then wrap it once it's leather hard, because eventually you're going to use the symbols that you created or create new symbols to carve in or add onto your piece, like you can see right here where I show you guys the molds or the symbols that we made with the test tiles the other day.